All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That's Not Real Trek. This is episode number 27. I am Scotty, also known as EBC, directly below me with a brand new head of hair made out of copper metal. We smelted it down and put it in her hair just yesterday afternoon. How this short and sweet. I didn't even say your name. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. So as we're continuing along with this, and 27 weeks is nothing to sneeze at here, and we've had to
Mhm.
stretch it out, and we're talking about going back to the regular trek after this, and um, you know, potentially continuing the song long term. I look at it as we're kind of like on a mini journey ourselves, going through all of these things. Not only that we haven't necessarily seen ourselves, but relating it to the things that we have seen, and making the comparisons, and um, especially with this series, seeing the references and all of that. um, have you had any thoughts as to like the broader picture of this? Like maybe lower decks in relation to Strange New Worlds and Discovery, or in relation to TNG or the other series that we've seen.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a more laid back series and maybe more geared towards like a casual fan. Um, but at the same time, it has something there for the hardcore fans, all the Easter
Mm,
eggs. So, I just love that every reference, like they can just pull a reference from there's so much material and
right.
you never know if it's going to come from TNG, Voyager, the original series, Discovery. They just pull things out of everywhere. So it really is nice that there's something that kind of links everything together and makes it feel like one. It's like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is like an interconnected universe. And now we
Mm-hmm.
have a series that is addressing all of that. You would have casually in like Voyager, they would talk briefly about things that happened in Next Generation or like,
Right.
reference characters, but nothing so, just skips around so much and like pulls it all together. So it's just nice to have something like that.
I mean, you're definitely right in that. Like it seems like none of the other series previously had done anything more than like minor references. Aside
Mm-hmm.
from, I mean, like the original series episode, um, I think it's the Naked Time or something like that, with Sulu,
Mm-hmm.
bare shirt with the foil. And then
Mm-hmm.
they encounter the same virus in TNG, the Naked Now.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. But we don't have any like direct references to severe Trek history like we've seen in Lower Decks, where they're having Tom Paris come onto the ship, and there's this hero worship of Tom Paris because of what he did, and or the same thing happening with Will Riker now captaining the Titan, and
Mm-hmm.
uh all of the little Easter eggs and references that we've seen to these various points throughout the other series. It's almost like they're creating this paradigm in which they're not only referencing other points in Star Trek history, but expanding upon them and building them better into the narrative. Like not only did this thing happen in Trek history, but oh, it's related to all of these other things, and here's how we're also dealing with that in our current episode. And they're almost building like background story to
Yeah.
all of these different things, and that I
Mm-hmm.
think is the greatest part of that. Like you love to see things in Star Trek where they have gone and they said this is an established storyline, and now we're gonna go back and build even more around that. All the fill in the
Filling in
details,
all the gaps, yeah.
the gaps, the holes, the continuity errors. If they're able to come up
Hmm.
with an explanation for a continuity error, those sorts of things. And that's why I really, as much as people wanted to poo-poo it, I really loved Discovery because the start of the Klingon War was never explained. It
Hmm.
was never explored, and they said, okay, well, let's do that, and let's
Yeah.
show what this is. And maybe it wasn't the greatest thing that they ever put together in television history, but I thought it was cool, and I thought, it fills in a lot of those gaps and makes it so that you know more of the story than you did before.
Hmm.
You know, I don't see anything wrong with that sort of model
Yeah.
either.
It's better than nothing.
Right.
Not having
Exactly.
not having a story at all there.
Right. And that's also why I liked Enterprise. Like, I know you haven't seen any of that, but there were several times in the 4 year run of Enterprise that the creators did exactly that, trying to fix continuity error. Like, at one point in the series, they come up with at least a potentially viable explanation for why in the original series Klingons had smooth foreheads, and then in TNG they had ridges. You
Which
know,
is
what's the explanation for that aside from creative whatever? And
hmm
Enterprise actually attempted to answer that. You know,
nice.
so I really appreciate when they have attempted to do that and create more of the story. And and we're back to the same old thing as I don't, you can poo poo it all you want. It's still real Trek because it's still part of the story, and it's still, filling in those gaps and details, and doing so in a mostly respectful manner, I think.
Hmm.
It's not like they're going and just absolutely completely ruining something that they came up with previously, just for the sake of getting more cash in tickets, or not even tickets, but just advertising money and whatever else. No, I think
Yeah.
everybody has done their own version of how to attempt to make that better, and over the years it just gets more and more and more complex, and I have really enjoyed all of it. So
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Lower Decks adding their own flavor to this with all of the inside jokes and the Easter eggs. Uh it's always been, I think, like a welcome addition. So uh, real cool. All right, enough jibber jabber, as one of our friends would say. So we'll get on with tonight's first two episodes. Season 2, episode 7, Where Pleasant Fountains Lie, and season 2, episode 8, I Excretus. Whatever that is supposed to. Well, I'm sure we'll find out. Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, here we go. Whatever the hell this thing is doing. Anyway, yeah. So the guest stars continue. Alice Krige,
Yeah,
reprising her role as the Borg Queen. What'd you think of that?
that was awesome. I loved. First Contact was one of my favorite movies
Oh yeah.
of the Star Trek. So uh, that was great having that in there.
Well, and just like Jonathan Frakes as Riker, just as what's his name is Tom Paris, they added in a little bit more dramatic flair, a little bit of comedic value there.
Mhm.
So to see Alice Krige add that into the Borg Queen, you know, a little bit of comedic value to the Borg Queen in this episode. That was just fabulous and very well done.
Yeah.
The writing for that one scene in particular was very well, very excellent. The her blowing on Boimler's skin right there, you know, right by the ear,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Oh, that
just
tickles.
yeah, just a great rendition of that to pay homage to the movie. So yeah, that was really cool. Um, and the first episode, it seemed like, you know, um for a good couple of minutes that they were really starting to go in a serious direction. Like you the storyline started out like um, quite opposing to most of the storylines in Lower Decks, where they got very serious and were like, oh my god, you know, then and what's his face seems to be dead, and
Yeah.
yeah, and they're trying to address all of that, and then of course it ended up, you know, but more importantly, I think than that, you know, it seems like they were just trying to explore a little bit with the writing and see where they could go with some of that. But I was
Hmm.
more attuned to the maybe not a tribute, but you know, the references and almost making fun of a couple of different things. First of all, whatever that TNG episode where Picard and the one guy and Wesley get stranded on the planet,
Oh, yeah.
with the water and yeah, all of that good stuff.
I forgot about that episode
And
and I didn't
and
really catch that connection, but yeah, that makes sense.
and just about any episode where there's a shuttle craft crash on a planet and now we're trying to survive in a hostile environment or have to deal with
Mhm.
some weird alien or something like that. Yeah. Um, there was a couple of references or a couple of different points in Star Trek history where we're dealing with an evil supercomputer who's taking over something or other, and we have to, you know, try to prevent that. Um, the other plot that was going on in that episode, definitely, like you were mentioning in our chat, there definite notes between Deanna and her mother there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what was like your opinion on that part of it specifically?
I thought it was cool that they referenced it without really saying that you immediately got that vibe of it. If you're a Star Trek fan, you know. But they didn't outright say it. So that was
Right.
kind of like an interesting way for them to do that. And it was it was a cool story, you know. It was nice to see a little bit of like growth from what's his name, Phillips. Uh,
Phillips,
you
yeah.
know, we get a little bit more about his life and his background because he hasn't been like a main focus. But now, you know, we know all this extra information about him.
Right.
And I was looking at who does his voice, and it's Paul Shear. So I can see them expanding his role as this goes on. Just being like, you know, Paul Shear is like kind of a well-known name and a more, I guess he's a more popular actor. So I can see them like focusing on him a little more.
Well, I mean, it's limitless, really, how
Hmm.
much they could explore different things. If their entire goal, and I got to imagine, you know, they're putting some serious thought into the direction of the storyline. We've got 3 seasons now of Lower Decks, you know, and they're probably going to go for at least 4 or maybe 5.
Yeah, I
Um,
think they've greenlit a fourth one,
did
maybe.
they already? Yeah. Uh,
Let me see.
so, but the bottom line is, you know, they're half of the show is references and Easter
Hmm.
eggs and fan service. The other half is the character development, but at the same time, they're kind of like building off of each other. You know, whether or not whatever happens with Mariner and her mom, or whatever happens with uh, the other characters and their interpersonal relationships, that's almost built into the complexities of the references in that, um,
Yeah.
and kind of runs parallel to it as well. um, so yeah, at the very least, like, in TNG, you had all of the times that Picard found out that Loaxana is coming on the Enterprise, and just, absolutely cringes internally and externally. And
Hmm.
yeah, that whole relationship was definitely present there. Um, so neat ways to do the references, but not necessarily, like you said, uh, directly referencing them. Like, you've got certain scenarios or feelings, or in relationships between certain characters that uh, just in general reference some of the things that we've come to know about
Hmm.
Star Trek. So yeah, I really got to hand it to the writers, man. They have done so much justice to all of Trek history in this, and they continue to do a great job. All right,
Yeah.
anything else before we move on?
Oh, I loved how they made the simulations in the second episode there, like all different episodes from all different series.
Yeah,
They used original series TNG, like I mean it was just all over the place. So it was a
yeah,
nice way to reference everything all at once.
like the Borg babies that we only saw
Mm-hmm.
in the first Borg episode in TNG, and
Never
never
again.
saw again. Yep,
Never
no,
explained.
yeah, but they're there.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that was pretty cool. But yeah, all the way up through um, the the Borg Queen and everything that entailed that, the the manner in which the Borg were operating, and the manner in which she operated, and the kind of relationship between um, the various ways that the Borg interact with other species. All of that was present. You could
Hmm.
definitely see all of the Borg's history in this episode, uh,
Yeah.
and kind of represented in this whole scenario. Like, Boimler didn't think he was in jeopardy, and so he's attacking it from that level of, I'm not actually in danger here, but then by the end of the episode he actually is.
Yeah.
You know, the Borg get into your mind like that.
Right. Psychologically, he's
Right.
traumatized.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that in itself was the reference to how Picard dealt with being assimilated after the fact, you
Yeah.
know, and the anger that he felt. I mean, that was in the next movie, or in that same movie, the first contact. He was talking about how, he had the cybernetics implanted throughout his body, and then eventually, dealing with the emotions of that after the fact, and that was the whole premise for the story of him, marrying Captain Ahab and becoming so possessed
Hmm.
by the revenge for what they did to him. you know uh, that in itself was a nod to that scenario, in which you've got Boimler, who's now dealing with the emotional scars of just dealing with this intensive simulation,
Yeah.
and seeing the Borg in that kind of capacity up close. And
Mhm.
I'm surprised we didn't see Badgie, though. you
Yeah, I
know
know. It would have been a perfect
yeah,
opportunity.
that would have been a great uh place to insert him there. All right.
Absolutely.
So then we've got our last two episodes of the night here, which also happen to be the last two episodes of season two, episode
Ooh.
9. I'm guessing it's pronounced Wage Douge. spelled Wej, and then the second word Duj. I'm assuming this is something to do with Klingons because that
Okay.
it sounds like very Klingon pronunciation or spelling of those words. So we'll
Mhm.
see what that is. And then episode 10, the finale of season 2, first contact. So
Okay.
we'll see what that is. Here we go.
To be continued.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest cliffhanger we've seen in this series thus far.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the further we get into it, the more um intensive storylines are getting. They're
Yeah.
at first everything was, kind of loosey goosey, and now we're really like weaving a story uh into the next season apparently. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Um so before we yeah, let's actually do these in order here. So
Mhm.
the first episode there, uh it seemed like that what they were trying to do was to show lower decks from the perspective of other species, which, I mean, okay, so you had some common jokes in there, like the Klingons killing and beating each other up, and the Vulcans just like, you know I have no emotion. Your emotional outburst is outrageous, and that sort of thing. um and culminated by, I mean, I laughed so hard at the Borg lower decks
Ending.
during the credits. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
um
it's a genius.
yeah, yeah, and they're just, I kept waiting for there to be like something, and no, it was throughout the whole credits it was just them sleeping. um so that was fantastic.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I well, the first thing is, the Vulcan officer who they were basically saying had an emotion problem. I saw that as like an opener where they were going to eventually transfer, this person was going to be posted on the Cerritos or something like that,
Mhm.
you know, kind of joining the main crew that we've
Mhm.
known so far. And that this was not a person that we've known about previously, but it seems like that was an opening to some larger storyline that's coming about, or that person, that Vulcan playing a more integral part into the future of the story.
Yeah.
Um, and I just kind of found it interesting that they were coming at it from the perspective of, we have each culture doing the same things that we've seen replete in Star Trek history, like the Klingons constantly talking about honor but then not actually doing it, you know,
Right.
or the Vulcans talking about, suppressing emotion, and for the most part they are, but
Mhm.
somebody's not quite doing it up to standards, and there's just, you know the Vulcan version of ridicule and disappointment. um yeah, so I thought that was interesting. But the more important part of that, I patted myself on the back in that episode for recognizing a couple of episodes ago how in the hell did the Pakleds get to where they are in this current timeline with the technology and the weapons, and posing such a threat to the Federation.
Uh-huh.
And that was answered in this episode, where
Yeah.
apparently this renegade Klingon who says he cares about honor but really doesn't, is
Mhm.
arming the Pakleds and, providing them with all of these technological advancements that they otherwise wouldn't have. And doing so in order to, cause problems with the Federation. Um, so, I mean, as much as we could look at this series as, just tongue-in-cheek jokes, and yeah, it's got its own storyline, and that they're really developing, um, it's their version of Trek canon, and saying, okay, we've got these things that are actually happening in the Trek universe that you've maybe not heard about before, but you sure as hell know what's going on because you've seen all of the references and the baseline things before. We
Yeah.
know that the Pakleds are not as technologically advanced as they seem here, so who's doing that? And now we have an answer for that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, tying into this last episode, now this is going to be a big part of the storyline moving forward, is, how is Captain Freeman going to not only deal with this incarceration, but, and clear her name, but also deal with the larger looming threat of a Klingon who has now apparently destroyed or severely bombed the Pakled home planet and framed Captain Freeman for it.
Hmm.
How did this come about? So
Right.
we've got a lot of backstory to deal with there.
Yeah.
Um, but I found it really interesting that at the very least, yes, it did have to do with Klingons, and more importantly, um, I, I didn't catch any of their names, but the young Klingon man who was you know, tr- dealing with being a lower decks person and his rise to captaincy, because that's what the Klingon culture is actually like in
Hmm.
reality, or Star Trek reality. So what did you see with that whole premise of the Klingon lower decks and him moving up, and how that storyline played out?
I yeah, I thought it was interesting, like that they've built it in a way that they did it in the story. They showed the lower decks and have him go up through, and now he's almost I mean, I guess he's like mutinying against the captain. Uh, so that was kind of cool to see, and I mean, I was just very distracted during that whole thing where I think that they purposely made the captain of the Klingon ship look like Gowron, like with the crazy eyes and that. And then I was like looking at all the Klingons, like okay, which one? Like they modeled this one after like the Duras sisters. You
Right.
saw them. You saw Gowron. And I'm like watching. I was more distracted by that, to be honest. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting storyline for them to follow, and something that like we've watched it evolve over time from you know the Packlids just kind of being what maybe we thought was going to be like a one-off episode with Packlids until into now this is a major storyline that's affecting it's affecting the Vulcans, it's affecting the Cerritos, it's
Right.
affecting the characters. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah. The I was looking at the actors that played the Klingons in that episode, and I didn't recognize any names, but for
Mm-hmm.
sure, the reason I started looking that up was for sure they had the guttural tones down pat, and
Mm-hmm.
I could have sworn one of them, not the one that played Gowron. I'm thinking of one of the Klingons that was featured pretty prominently in DS9,
Okay.
and he played this character multiple times. Martok, that's who I'm
Bartok.
thinking
Okay.
of.
Yeah.
General Martok. Yep. Uh, so I don't know if that was one of them. I didn't get that far, but I don't think he was actually in the episode.
Yeah.
But he definitely reminded me of the guy that played Martok. Like he had that
Mm-hmm.
same kind of tone, was still able to pull off that type of uh, the type of feel that you would get from the typical Klingon warrior, no matter who is playing that person, who is playing that Klingon, they all have the same kind of almost like a roar to their voice, especially the
Hmm.
louder they get.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so very very interesting dynamic there with the Klingons, and it was well played out. But yeah, I noticed that as well too. The Gowron eyes, and the breastplate that revealed the inner cleavage and all that good stuff. Yeah, that was good stuff. Um, so like I said, we got into this storyline now. This, and like you said, it's a much bigger part of the overall storyline. This dynamic between now the Klingons and the Pakleds and the Federation, and even the Vulcans were brought into that. One
Hmm.
quick note about that: the Vulcan ship that you saw there was a Vulcan ship design that was revealed in Enterprise, and we never saw it
Mm.
in any other series. So if you've never seen that, that's where it came from. And when we get to Enterprise, you'll see them very prominently displayed in that. That's the old ship design that the Vulcans had back in that time. So Enterprise takes place about 100 years before Kirk and Spock,
Hmm.
and in other words, they're saying that the Vulcan ship design has changed very little in 200 years.
Yeah.
And why? Because the Vulcans perfected that ages ago, and they still have the same ships, and they still have the same technological advancement that they have. Although obviously they're still advancing, but you know
Hmm.
they perfected their ship design ages ago. So we first would see that ship design in Enterprise 200 years ago, and they're still piloting those same kinds of ships. Um, so that also was cool. And this isn't the first time we've seen the ship design being, or the various ship designs being recreated in animated form here. We saw that with the Titan. We saw that with a couple other ships in this particular last episode.
Hmm.
Um, but I thought that was really cool. Showing, because you don't really see Vulcan ships in TNG, DS9,
Yeah.
Voyager, even the new Picard. It's
Hmm.
just not there, or any of the next gen movies. It just wasn't there. You saw a
Right.
little bit of it in the original series, but it was really an Enterprise that the Vulcan ships popped,
Hmm.
and it was really nice to see that here. So I'll have to keep that in mind when we do get to Enterprise, um, to highlight that for you, because it really is a cool design to see in action.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was looking at it and I was like, that's a neat ship. Like, it's very, it's very unique.
Hmm.
You don't see that.
And sleek and fast looking, and also really pops in the battle scenes, and you could see that in this episode. They really did a nice job with the battle scene, and
Hmm.
uh and portraying, even in an animated element, the action that was going on, and the tension, that I mean, it was almost like watching an episode of Star Trek with an epic battle scene that isn't animated. It
Hmm.
almost didn't matter.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. All right, so this last episode now, um, as we were talking in our live chat, there, it seems like they really are trumping up the episodes. They're really acting as if maybe this is going to be the last episode of the
Hmm.
series, and that they're putting a lot into it. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. It seems like that's kind of a facet of newer Star Trek in general, and maybe it isn't quite the positive addition to newer Trek that we would hope. Uh, Certainly far more epicness, I would say,
Mhm.
than in previous iterations of Trek, and maybe that works for it, maybe it doesn't. But um, I personally have enjoyed the way they continually seem to want to up the ante and make it even more than it has been in the past. How do you come up with something that is, more epic than a galaxy class starship crashing into a planet, or, you know, uh whatever we had seen in previous versions of Trek, and it's just like, oh my god, Data died. Oh my god, how do you top that? Okay,
Yeah.
well, we've got to come up with something else that's even more epic or more shocking, or, more makes you consider the ramifications. So I thought that was really interesting. Even you think back to the beginning of the Next Generation, Gene Roddenberry was uh, almost dead set against the Enterprise D separating,
Hmm.
and the creators, and or rather Paramount at the time, basically overruled Gene Roddenberry and said, we have to have that epic thing in this first episode that's going to draw them back. So they wanted the ship to separate.
Yeah.
How many times? I mean, you look, and we probably only saw what, three more times, four
Yeah,
more
it wasn't
times in
very
the
much.
entire series, right?
Yeah.
Including in the movie Generations, which was the final time.
Hmm.
um you know that was the thing that really stepped it up. So, you know now we're on the Cerritos, which is a California class ship that nobody's ever heard of, and it's a little podunk vessel out in the middle of nowhere. How do we make that epicness? Oh,
Hmm.
let's just take the hull off and
Yeah.
fly, fly into danger that way. um
Yeah.
I saw a couple of things in that sequence that were absolutely great references. The first one being Riker with his joystick in what was that? What movie was that? Uh, Insurrection,
Oh, yeah,
on the Enterprise E with his joystick,
yeah.
manual control mode or
Emmanuel.
whatever they came up with. Yeah, that was great. So we've got Ransom piloting his the ship with his joystick. Um, the uh, in what was it in First Contact, where they're doing the spacewalk with the magnetic boots on the hull. I saw some of that there. The maglocks, those little
Hmm.
we
The
can't just pop a couple of screws and go.
no, no, it's
No, we
got to
got to
be
do this
fancy.
whole boom,
Yeah,
and put
yeah,
it
yeah,
down,
yeah,
and then yeah,
yeah.
up and down, and
Oh, that one's stuck.
yeah, that one stuck. Turn it to the left 3/4 of a turn, and then phaser your nuts off or something. Um, yeah, it's just those sorts of things, or when they're standing on either side of this gaping hole in the front of the bridge because we had to remove the view screen, you know. And oh yeah, there's a rock over there, iceberg dead
Yeah.
ahead. And finally, I saw a reference. I don't know if you saw this. I saw a reference to Discovery there, with Ransom with his helmet, and the uh, light signals that were being projected onto the glass of his helmet to
Hmm.
show him where he was steering the ship and what was coming. That was a direct reference to what we saw in Discovery with the
Ah,
projections on Burnham's helmet when she's going in to do the thing, right?
yeah. I did
And
not catch
you
that.
wouldn't
Yeah.
consider that.
Yeah.
that they're necessarily going to put in references to Discovery or some of that, but why not? The technology
Mm-hmm.
is supposedly exists, so we might as well use
Yeah.
it. Um, so yeah, a lot of good stuff there.
Mm.
Any other things that you saw that I missed?
Oh, I really like the little whale characters. Like I want them to show them again. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but like I just really like that. That was I don't know. I thought they were like it's a very serious storyline. It's the finale and they've got all this intense battle stuff going on, but they also have the levity and the humor
Right.
built in with, these characters over here and like I just thought it was clever and fun.
So I wanted to mention here one of my absolute favorite novels that it's got nothing really to do with any of the television series or anything like that. It's a novel. I'm actually looking at it right now, written by Diane Duane, who wrote many Star Trek novels, called Dark Mirror, and
Okay.
it's one of my absolute favorite Star Trek novels because the Next Generation in the show never explored the mirror universe. And Diane Duane said, "We need a novel for that." And that was the novel she wrote, Dark Mirror. And it explored the Enterprise D crew meeting, being pulled across the dimensions. Now, the reason I bring that up is not because of the mirror universe or anything that they dealt with in that. The reason I brought it up is because in the beginning of the novel, one of the characters is a dolphin. And the dolphin, I believe the name of the character is Hui, spelled I think Hwei or something like that. The character is under the premise that dolphins, like other types of marine biology, whales and whatever else, can sense uh, things that we humans cannot. And in this
Ah.
particular case, this dolphin character could sense cosmic strings.
Oh.
So the things that they say tether the universe together and they exist in subspace.
Okay.
So right at the beginning of the novel, they're sending this cetacean scientist out in a skin suit, a wetsuit, into space
Oh my
in
God.
front of the Enterprise to feel the vibrations of the cosmic strings, and this is leading to some kind of scientific discovery or research or something. And then a little bit later, they realize that they've crossed over into the mirror universe, and Hui just goes batshit crazy because it all feels wrong,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw these two, what, like beluga whale characters
Yeah, I think so.
in there, I immediately flashed back to this because this was a novel that I first read probably 25, 30 years ago, right? and
Uh-huh.
and it's like I said, it's been one of my favorites. I'm looking right at my copy on the bookshelf here, and I immediately thought of that because I, aside from George and Gracie, I
Mm-hmm.
have not seen any other kind of reference to that. They're actually referencing maybe this in particular, that we have cetacean species that are smart enough now, because through whatever process, to be Starfleet members, Starfleet
Mm-hmm.
crew members, and they're a part of the Cerritos crew. So if that is, I'm gonna have to do some research now and see if that's the actual connection that they were trying to make here, which is fabulous in my mind because I've not seen that anywhere else, just in that one novel.
Yeah.
And if that's what they were doing, they're now tying in novels from Star Trek history, which I mean, you could consider those canon if you want to, and for
Right.
the most part it works. But
Mhm.
they're out now tying things like that in and saying, yes, we do have dolphins and whales that have not only learned how to communicate and humans to communicate with them, and now we've got this interspecies relationship. They're actually joining Starfleet and are regular crew members on ships now in the 24th century. So really really cool connections there, even if it was not necessarily intended, but uh, that was very cool to see. And then of course they're both hilarious.
Mhm.
Yeah, did you catch some of that dialogue yet?
Oh
Don't
yeah.
don't let him dry out. He needs water.
Spray him down.
Yeah. Um, and the dialogue that those two were spouting out was pretty funny all
Yeah.
along. Almost like their own brand of comic relief within the episode there.
Hmm.
So yeah, we definitely need to see more of that, and maybe those two characters in particular. Let's hopefully we'll see them on the Cerritos a little bit
Recur.
more here.
Yeah.
So all right, so now we're at the end of season 2. Any season long thoughts, or what you think occurs to you we should be looking for as we go into season 3 next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really evolved. I would say like the through storylines really kind of got started in season 2, and now it's really evolving into like this really smart storytelling
Mm,
um that they're doing, but at the same time it still has that lighthearted like feel to the show. So yeah, just see more character development, and these see where these storylines go. It'll be nice to see. It's really like I feel like it's just hitting its stride. Like maybe season 1 was a little clunky, and now it's just like they got it. They know what they're doing now.
mm. So what do you any thoughts on the resolution for the current storyline? We've got this pack-led threat that is essentially because of an interfering Klingon who's been arming them. What
Hmm.
you have any thoughts or clues on the resolution to what's going on right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems strange that out of nowhere this has come up, and I'm guessing they're going to do like a whole court martial thing and have everybody come in and speak on the captain's behalf, and obviously prove that she had nothing to do with it. But
Right.
and maybe that Klingon that's mutinying against his captain might come into play as well.
Yeah, he
So
didn't. He didn't kill him.
no, yeah.
So he's still alive, and I guess they were gonna go back to the Klingon homeworld and have him stand trial or see what the council was gonna do about him. I have a sneaking suspicion though that we're going to see some kind of like greater conspiracy within the Klingon High Council.
Mm, interesting.
And yeah, because that's not happened before at all,
Yeah.
ever in Klingon
Never.
history.
Never.
Yeah. So few I mean, honestly, probably just Worf
Yeah.
is the only actual Klingon with honor. You know, as much
uh,
as they spout off about it,
mhm.
maybe his brother Kern,
Yeah.
was it?
Turn. Yeah.
Yeah, Kern's no. I don't know if Kern's dead now or not. I can't remember if they killed him off. I know he came back for an episode of DS9.
Yeah, I think he's still alive.
Yeah, which I mean, you haven't seen any DS9 yet, have you?
I've seen here and
Little
there like
little
one or two
snippets. Yeah.
episodes. Yeah, very, very small amount.
Okay. Well, it's going to be a couple of years before we get to that anyway. So.
Yeah. I saw a really cringy episode with like a Ferengi mom who was like
Oh
naked. I
yeah.
don't, it was like off the wall, and I was like, what is happening? Because I had no context to any of this storyline. And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, what?
Yeah, we'll get to all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure. All right. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So we start season 3 next week. 4 more episodes. The basic gist now of what we have left is they've only got season 3 of Lower Decks. Season 4 is expected, but it's probably not going to come out until the fall. So we're looking at a good 5 to 6 months
Mhm.
before season 4 comes out. So we're going to do season 3, which, with 10 episodes, that's only going to be two and a
Mhm.
half of our episodes. So we're going to have season 3, episodes 1 through 4, season 3, episodes 5 through 8, and then in 3 weeks, the last 2 episodes, and then in that same episode, we're going to start Prodigy.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're rapidly wrapping this up here and moving on to bigger and better things. So, all right, that's about it. And thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you later.
Adios.